Anyway, Carolyn Ferrell, she's a BS in biology, MA in education, specializing in administration and supervision. She taught biology for 25 years in Clarksville, Montgomery County school system, and was awarded numerous awards. Recognized by Claus Noble for excellence in teaching. At my retirement, I ranked in the top 10 biology teachers in the state of Tennessee. She's a Montgomery County historian for 2 years, author of 11 books on Montgomery County, a discoverer of the former Libby Prison Superintendent Thomas Pratt Turner and MC contributor of the Then and Now of our downtown member of Custom House Board, a member of the Montgomery County Public Records Commission, charter member of the Montgomery County Preservation Committee, and a reenactor and tour guide for 6 locations in Clarksville. Is that all?
I clean windows too.
Clean windows too.
Leap over buildings in a single bound, all the, the usual stuff. I want to thank him because we had some technology glitches and he got them solved. So he really made it possible for me to be here tonight to do this program. But if you could go back in time and think of somebody from here, from the past that you would like to meet, think about who that would be. Who would you want to go back and meet? They could be notorious, they could be a good person, they could be somebody that really made a difference in your community. Well, for me, it was him. And it all happened because of a little girl who died a horrible death, and she had her statue that was on her grave was stolen. And because of who she was, it made the national news. So I was there the day that this statue was returned back to Clarksville. This was in 1996. And being a biologist, I said, somebody needs to write a book about this. And everybody was like, yeah. Well, nobody did. So being the biologist that I am, I decided to write a book. Didn't know anything about what I was doing. But I was determined to get the story down. And what a story it is. I think they could honestly make a movie. You know, she only lived 4 years, so what can you do with 4 years? Well, if you go into her past and go into the descendants from the family, then you'll get it. But Charles Tyler was one of those that I would want to meet. In doing the research, I like to get inside of people's heads and think about why they do what they do. I have a lot of regrets when I go back and think about things that I should have done. And I think this man honestly went to his grave being a criminal judge and had no second doubts about what he did. I honestly think he went to bed each night peaceful and not second guessing any decision he ever made. And boy, did he have to make some. Okay, we're going to do this the old-fashioned way. Okay, he grew up on a farm called Hickory Wild out close to the Tennessee-Kentucky border. His father was a schoolmaster who spoke and wrote Greek and Latin fluently. Judge Tyler was the second oldest son, so he was not expecting anything because the oldest son was going to inherit the plantation and all that, except the older son at the school when there's all these boys in the house and they're learning all these important subjects. He was doing some fisticuffs with another boy, and he went back, fell on the floor, hit his head, and died. The family didn't even know he existed because back in the time when you had somebody that died, you didn't talk about him anymore. So I had to convince the family members that he actually existed. So Judge Tyler was like, all of a sudden he was the guy. Well, before anything could really happen, something called the Civil War broke out. And being the type of man that he went to war. He was in all 4 years of the war. He came back, and when he came back to Hickory Wild, they're holding an auction to get rid of his farm, to parcel off his farm. Like so many people lost their farms after the Civil War. So he came back to nothing. Well, he came back and he went to the Cumberland Law School in Lebanon and came back with a law degree. And just at the time that he gets into Clarksville, our Judge King passes away, and he walks right into this job. And if you want to know, Edmund Lurton is the brother of Horace Lurton, who was the Supreme Court judge. Now, why was he so important? He was not only the criminal court judge for the county, but he was also the financial officer. Nobody's had that kind of power. And why they gave it, I'm not really sure. But his 2 times great nephew, Judge Tyler Gill, I was driving around and showing him the places that was connected in Clarksville to his ancestor. He said, "Oh, I wish I'd had that kind of power." Do you know that every single cent that went through the county had to go through his approval? And then he had the judgeship? Never before. Okay, that's the schoolhouse. That's where it was a boarding school, or you could ride your horse and come in and do classes and then go home. It was called Hickory Wild because his father, the schoolmaster, would use hickory sticks to discipline his boys. He would take them out in the field and they would have a meeting of the minds with those hickory sticks. Now, here's the thing. As you know, it's a federal law to destroy a cemetery. The Judge Tyler, his father was a state representative. The cemetery was surrounded by an cast iron fence, and his father had a tall obelisk. And doggone if a developer didn't take it down. I didn't know it was there. Yeah, you knew it was there. Tore it down, and so I did an aerial trying to figure out where I think that the cemetery was, and if I'm correct, it's right up there. My little pointer won't go on the screen, but you see the cluster of about 5 trees at the very top? That would be my guess. That would be my guess. But that house was built on the foundation of Hickory Wild. Judge Tyler, when he moved to town, he had his gate put on there, CWT, to let everybody know, he knows who he is. Okay, so he comes to Clarksville and he lives with his mother, who is a wonderful person. He's got 2 sisters that are marriageable age, and he's living there with these 3 women. Can you imagine? He's been growing up in a school full of boys, and now he's got these women he's got to deal with. Well, how did his mother, who lost the farm, get to live in a house that you'll see soon? Because Judge Tyler's father allowed her to keep her dowry, just in case. Now, folks, that's rare. So she bought this nice house in Clarksville. Again, you'll see what it looked like. I have friends that live in there. Okay, he attended church, and this is where he met his wife, Molly. And you think about this powerful man. He says that he was scared to death to ask her to marry him. Absolutely terrified to ask her to marry him. Okay, there's the house. Now, let's take this portion off here. That was not original. This house had a normal hip roof with a covered front porch, and the lady that bought it after he passed away did all this renovation to it. If you know Kitty Harville, she's a famous artist in Clarksville. She lives there now, but she's down in Brazil right now with her husband because President Trump would let him stay in the United States because he was a German citizen. So she had to go where they could live together. There she is. Now, Victorian women, she's got a very difficult role to play here. She's a Victorian woman. She's got to keep her mouth shut, for one thing. She's got to watch what she does. Everybody's watching her, making sure she's prim and proper and everything that a Victorian woman should be. She had a horrible beginning. Her mother had lost several children, and so one day when she had a friend over to her house before she married, she found her mother hanging by the neck in her doorway. So she had a rough beginning there, but they were very much attached to one another, very much in love. And there she is. Look at the Victoria. She's got necklaces, brooch on, earrings, sort of like I wore this today because I bought it years ago and I never got to wear it, so I'm gonna wear it tonight. So there it is. But don't throw me in the river because I'll sink. There he is. That's before he went to war. And there he is years later as judge. And there's a little girl. A lot of people wouldn't even know about Judge Tyler, and that's a shame because for what you'll find out how important he was. This little girl was the apple of his eye. He adored her. Whenever he went out in public, he made sure that she was with him, and he would introduce her to everybody. Nanny, tell Mr. Hawkins what your name is and who your parents are. But if you'll look up at the top, it looks like she's got a little bow tie on. That's actually a pin that says mother on it, made with seed pearls. I've held it in my hand. That Pope Grundy Johnson, you may have heard of him. His father was the postmaster of the United States during the Polk administration. She's a little Victorian, so she wants to wear her grandmother's jewelry. So she's wearing a little thing that says mother there. She is standing, if you could see it more plainly than what you can, she's standing on straw. I thought, why would they throw straw on the floor? Because as little girls like to fidget, and it takes a while for the picture to take, they put a clamp here and probably around her neck, and it made her stand still. You've seen this with dolls. I've seen dolls being held up like that. But that was a very common practice. The man who took this picture was from Scotland, can you guess? He was Mr. McCormick, and he was, in fact, my great-grandfather built a building that this picture that he took was taken in. He took this photograph, and that photograph was used to sculpt her monument, the one that's going to be stolen. Okay, this is the other daughter, Emily. Emily grew up and got married, got divorced, got married again, and had a pretty much normal life. She was very musical, very much loved by, of course, Judge Tyler also. She was a headstrong person. She ended up suing her aunt for money, and it was one of those things that happens in families that you hope don't happen, but they do. Okay. Judge Tyler sentenced 8 people to be hanged, but every one of them except that guy got off. Somebody in the paper wrote an article that says, "What does it take to get somebody hung around here? I mean, you murder this person, you murder that person, and you don't hang them? What's the deal with that?" So this one, he was the one that would murder somebody and take their body and throw them into Bellamy's Cave, which is his father-in-law's name. It's also called Hell's Hole. But they found out that he had done this because one of the bodies he threw in there, his shirt hung on a ledge. And they looked down there, and there he is, hanging on that ledge. So they were able to convict him. And Judge Tyler, this was at the time that, there was a time where they wanted to make it a public thing. Everybody come and see the hanging, and they would sell concessions, and people would get drunk watching this thing going on. And then they decided, that's sort of barbaric. We don't need to be watching this horrible thing. So when he was hanged, they had to put a special fence up behind the courthouse and let him be hung in the privacy of about 15 people. But his body was taken down, put on a boat, and he was taken back to where he lived. And he is Bill Morrill. He murdered at least 2 people. I think he probably murdered more. He wasn't a very bright guy. We think his father-in-law put him up to this because the 2 men that he murdered, he really wanted their land. And he said that the reason that he had to kill these 2, there were 2 black men, the reason he had to kill them is because the 2 men were attacking his family, his women family. So he just wasn't very, can you tell? I think his father-in-law probably put him up to that, said, you need to do better by my daughter. Okay, thank goodness, ladies. This is what happens when you wear a corset. Scarlet O'Hara being laced up and so forth. Your organs have got to go somewhere. So they either go up or they go down. And it probably, because Molly was not that old when she passed away, that they say that could contribute to you passing away. People had fainting couches in their houses. They had smelling salts. Women were considered delicate. Yeah, when you can't breathe. So luckily today we don't have to deal with that, but Scarlett O'Hara said she wanted her waist to be 17 inches. take a saucer and measure, I'm talking about a saucer, and measure it around, it's 17 inches. So your organs have got to go somewhere. Okay. We know that Judge Tyler he either had a miscarriage or a baby that died right after birth. The problem was the church recorded it, but they didn't say where it was buried. Well, you've got all the Tylers around you, and then there's nannies, and there's this blank spot. Duh, maybe the baby's buried there. So I called the city and I told them I want underground utilities man to come out and see if there is a coffin there, because at the time they were putting people in these cast iron coffins, some of them with glass lids. So the guy comes out, he doesn't know what I'm doing. So he runs that thing and that thing goes ballistic. I mean, ballistic. And he said, what is down there, a cannon? I said, not in a cemetery, but now we've located it. I don't know if it was a male or a female, so I put Tyler baby. How many of you have ever heard about these dowsing rods? Okay, any of you ever use them? Do they freak you out? Okay, they do in the cemetery. Whenever I do tours, I let people use them. I'm a biologist. I understand the electromagnetic field and how it would show if there was a disturbance in the ground where somebody was buried. But how does it tell you the gender of the person? That's what blows my mind. So I go over with this, with my tour group, and we hold those things, and they're in my car now. I've got a machete, I've got flour, and dowsing rods in my car. And sure enough, boom, it's a little boy. If it had done this, it'd been a little girl. So our best guess was that was a little boy that he lost. Okay, this is a sister, and this is again when you do, how many of you do genealogical research? And you do, like, the names are over and over again. Is that a cousin? Is it a nephew? Is it niece? What? Okay, when I talk about Emmy, I'm talking about the sister of Judge Tyler. When you talk about M, you're talking about Judge Tyler's daughter. And then on and on and on. But she never married. She was very dedicated to the church, and she had a disagreement with Judge Tyler late in her life. She thought that when their mother died, she was going to inherit the house, and he said, no, you're not going to inherit it, but you can stay here and live, and I'll take care of you like I always have. She packed up her bags and left. So that was one of the big bad things that happened in the family later on. Okay, this is Judge Tyler right here. We did not have a public library at first in Clarksville until he said, well, let's just use my office. From the floor to the ceiling, books. And this is the first librarian. You can see her sitting over there by I wouldn't want to sit in the same room with him. He's so intimidating. I was like, I would have to have a different office or something. But he's sitting there. We have his desk actually in our library today. But he's called the father of our public library because you can imagine he was taught Latin, Greek, very, very intelligent person. He taught his daughter, Latin and Greek. Her favorite book was Atlantis. At age 8. Have you ever tried to read the book Atlantis at age 8? Have you tried to read it now? Holy cow.
Is this Plato's Atlantis?
I'm sorry?
Is this Plato's Atlantis?
I don't know who the author was. I opened it up and started reading and going, nope, I'm not doing this. So she was extremely intelligent, but she made some stupid decisions later on. I'll talk about that. Okay, Judge Tyler is up here. Excuse me for doing that. But this guy right here is somebody that he really respected. His name was Uncle Billy. Now, Judge Tyler, you can imagine, had a temper. And whenever that temper would explode, somebody said, go get Uncle Billy, go get him. Well, somebody arrested a juvenile who was told at the door of the courthouse, now go home and behave yourself. Walked off. The guy decides, you know what? I'm just going to go in Judge Tyler's office and put my feet up on his desk and get my little self warm. He goes in there and does that. Judge Tyler comes in from a court case and finds that kid sitting at his desk with his feet up on it, and it explodes. And they had to go run get Uncle Billy because he was the only one that could calm him down. Well, Uncle Billy passed away, and Judge Tyler was one of 3 whites who came to the funeral for him, and he was so respected. And of course, these are the magistrates for the different districts in Clarksville that are pictured here on our courthouse. Okay, now in Clarksville, we had argument 4 or 5 courthouses. Let's just go to the courthouse that was on Franklin Street. In 1878, we had a big fire. It burned down 15 acres of Clarksville, and in that fire was our courthouse. And it wasn't a sad thing at all because it was really too small. It didn't even look like a courthouse. It looked like a house. And so when it burned down, Judge Tyler took everything he could. He sold the bricks, he sold the iron fence, he collected anything he could to build the courthouse that we have today in downtown Clarksville. Masterpiece of a building. So we got it all built. Judge Tyler was so proud of this courthouse. In fact, he's called the father of the courthouse. And in 1900, a fluke caused a fire, and the top layer of the courthouse burned. They got all the records out, church records, school records. The one a group of records they did not get out, and you may have run into this if you ever go to Clarksville and try to find somebody in the Riverview Cemetery. The cemetery records burned. So ever since 1878, they've been trying to recreate who's buried where in Riverview Cemetery. But they got the fire out fairly quickly, and they rebuilt it. And then lo and behold, in 1999, we had a tornado. And if you saw our courthouse, then I would go there and just cry, because I said, if they don't rebuild this, I'm leaving Clarksville. I can't bear to look at anything else rebuilt there. It literally was gutted out by the tornado, and they rebuilt it very much externally the way it was. Internally, it's not at all like it was, not at all. But I talked to a lady contractor, yes. She walked up to me and I said, is there any possible way that you can rebuild this? She said, honey, anything can be rebuilt if there's enough money. And sure enough, we had it rebuilt. But this was the 1900 courthouse fire. This is the Clarksville High School. I remember coming up here to a football game on your field over there, and I remember it was a real heated rivalry. I can't remember very much about it, but I remember because your field over there is unlike any one I've ever seen before, sort of on a hillside and the brick wall and all that. I thought that was the most wonderful looking field that I'd ever seen. But this was Clarksville High School. This was the original one. It's now apartments. And as soon as they got this thing built and they were building onto it, the top part of that building burned. So they took down the clock tower. They didn't rebuild it because they needed the money from that to build the extension. But now it's called the, Warren Penn Apartments. So, and you go in, it doesn't look at all like what it did. My father's classroom, he taught biology, was right there. They put him in the basement because he was a troublemaker. They would make an announcement while I was teaching. He'd go over that box, take it out and rip it and throw it on the floor and say, you're not interrupting my class. Well, they had to replace it 3 times, and he was warned not to do it again. Okay, there he is, Judge Tyler. This was across the street from Judge Tyler's house. You know about this. They said that Clarksville was not burned like several towns here in Kentucky because Tyler had too much power. I think it had more to do with the actual topography of Clarksville. If you think about it, the downtown area is a peninsula. We have got the Red River, then the Cumberland River, and then here's our downtown. Yeah, they can get in, can they get out? So I think that had more to do with it than anything else. And there is a lady that sewed an outfit, didn't know that she was sewing a KKK outfit for her husband. But even today, people, and you probably know this, there are people today that still, you don't talk about it. Don't talk about it. Because you might have known that your great uncle was one of them, and maybe he did something he shouldn't have done. But dynamiting fields, threatening, Judge Tyler's brother-in-law was threatened. Bad period in the time of the Judge Tyler got Clarksville through the reconstruction of the Civil War, through the Great Fire, through other fires, through the Night Riders, and World War I, and the Spanish-American War. I can't for the life of me understand why in the world he's not being honored. But at the end, and I'm not, having been a man, I can say honestly that I don't know, but from what I understand, your identity is so connected with your job that when that job is not there, it's like you've lost a part of you. Women, we go, yeah, we're out, we're free, we can get out there and do some stuff. Fun time. Guys, not the same thing. He was afraid. This was in 1918. He was running for re-election again, and if you can read that, he's desperate. He's almost saying, please, please vote for me, please. And when he lost that election, it devastated. He was like a wandering ghost downtown. He just didn't know what to do with himself. But the person who followed him was Judge Cunningham, and my great aunt was his secretary for many, many years. They thought that Judge Tyler had maybe taken some money, and so my great aunt was the one that investigated it. He didn't take a single cent. Okay, let me go back to another charge. When Judge Tyler was in office, he had a half-nephew that was in town and a half-niece. Reverend Beaumont, the Methodist preacher, had a son called Wes Beaumont, and he assaulted Judge Tyler's half-niece. Okay, this is an honor thing. So the nephew went after this Beaumont boy and shot at him and missed. Well, later on, they come in contact with one another, and Judge Tyler's half-nephew gets shot in the face. Now, they bring him to Judge Tyler's house. Molly is 8 months pregnant with Nanny. Can you imagine this happening in your house? So the boy died, and Judge Tyler, and I don't judge people, folks, listen, if you've ever been through a war, of course, if you've ever been through a war, you don't come back the same person. A lot of people came back with drinking problems. I certainly would understand that. Well, Judge Tyler did drink. He was charged, he went to the boy's father and shot at him. He called him out on the front porch and said, "Your son assaulted my great niece. You come on out, I'm going to shoot you." Well, he doesn't come out, but he shoots at the house. So Judge Tyler is accused of attempted murder, all these type of violations for being in office and so forth. And he's so powerful that the Leaf Chronicle won't even cover it. It's covered in the Nashville Tennessean, but it's not. He put the stop on anything being talked about in Clarksville, except for one little article that said this was a matter of honor, and rest his soul that Tyler Bryan died in this. But he got acquitted on all counts. I'm just saying, that's power. Okay, there he is. His daughter Emmy, no, let me see, there's Emily, Emmy. This is Emmy, right there at the top. Like I said, she grew up to live a full life. She and her father decided to take a trip out west. And the next thing they know, they've been gone a week or two, she's married to a miner out there. I'm talking about somebody that owns mining rights and so forth. Paper gets a hold of it and says, "What? She doesn't even know, what?" So she comes back and she stays there in Colorado, and he mistreats her and so forth, and Judge Tyler goes out there and finally gets her a divorce from him. And she comes back, they've got a son, and if you can just tell, basically that's a little Armstead right there. That's his grandson, and of course he adores him because that's the only grandson that he has. But what was she thinking? Okay, so what was he responsible for? He was responsible for the courthouse, the library, creation of miles and miles and miles of roads in Clarksville. He freed the ferries. Remember at the time, if you had to come into town or leave town, you had to cross using one of the 3 or 4 or 5 ferries and pay for that. And then responsible for our city jails and enforce all these ordinances. It's funny that here he is enforcing the liquor law when he's having a problem with it himself, but he did. But at the last, what happened with him, I think it was an age thing. The Supreme Court said you had to do this and you had to do this if you break this law. And he said, I'm not going to do it. I'll do one of them, but not both. You can't tell the Supreme Court that you're not going to do what they tell you to do. And it got out in the paper and they were like, what? And that really did hurt him. I think he was just at the point where he thought he was all powerful and could do anything he wanted to do. Okay, as soon as the first case of smallpox broke out, he was on top of it. Some communities said, well, let's just wait and see if it spreads. Well, he didn't do that. He got onto this and saved many lives by doing that. He wrote 2 books. The Scout is about Sam Davis, the boy hero of the Confederacy, and the KKK. Now you think, oh, he's talking about supporting the KKK. No, he was not. If you read the book on the KKK, he's condemning vigilante justice. He writes this story about this black man that was falsely accused of killing this white woman. Before they could, the court could even meet, they take him out and hang him, and he's talking about how wrong this is. He said, let the courts decide, don't take justice into your own hands. So people look at that and they misjudge him because they think he's supporting the KKK, and he certainly is not. He was responsible for the horse fountains in Clarksville. Now, you may not think that's an important thing, but you come over from the south side and you brought in all your crops to sell. Your horses are going to need some water, and they're not at the farm. So he was praised very highly for these horse fountains. He got us out of the absolute worst deficit because of the Civil War, nothing that he was responsible for. Do you get the feeling of why I'm frustrated that we haven't honored him? When we built the new court addition, they put the name of the county executive's name up there. And I know the man personally, like him, but all he did was say, yeah, we'll rebuild the courthouse. What? I want to go downtown and just take it down and put Judge Tyler's name up. And again, I know the man, I like him, but it certainly doesn't compare with what Judge Tyler has done. Okay, there you go. Was he losing it? Was he over extending his power? But they said that afterwards, and he didn't live but 2 more years after this. He just totally did not understand why he felt like they had been stabbed in the back. He felt like he had been really let down. But his funeral was held at Greenwood. He was buried next to his wife, close to Nanny. And his mother's headstone is this big cross. His wife's tombstone is a big cross. His headstone's this. What is he saying? He's saying, I'd rather spend the money on them. Well, let me talk about the little girl, Nanny, because Nanny was the one that got all the people really knowing about Judge Tyler. The little girl, like I said, was the apple of his eye. Somewhere in town, she got some tainted water. Diphtheria is a disease that you contract by drinking water that is contaminated with a certain type of bacteria. And it is the worst possible death you can go through almost for a child. The reason being is that bacteria starts on the inside and it starts shutting down your organs one after another, and you actually start decaying. So Judge Tyler was holding on. When you get diphtheria and you die, you are buried that day. You are buried that day. So I had heard that he wouldn't allow her to be buried. He was holding on. Do you remember Gone with the Wind and Little Bonnie Blue? I had a descendant that swears to me that Margaret Mitchell wrote that after Judge Tyler's daughter's death. So what did I do? I got my little car and I drove down to Atlanta and I go to the Margaret Mitchell Museum, and we go through records after. I cannot find a direct tie between anybody that knew Judge Tyler that would have known Margaret Mitchell. So maybe word of mouth she heard about it, I don't know. But I go to the church records And in the Trinity Church records, the date of her death is marked through, she's buried on the next day. Story was true. He didn't want her to be buried. There was also a story that because she didn't like the darkness, like the story Gone with the Wind, that there was a glass plate over her grave. Why would you do that? I don't know. But anyway, I don't think that one was true. I think that's made up. But everybody thought that her monument, which was made of Carrara marble, was carved in Italy. It was awarded. Everybody knew that. So I investigated, and I found out it was carved in Louisville, Kentucky. Can you imagine? How could he have paid for that? There's no way. Even today, they estimate that that if he had to replace that statue, it would cost him $5,000. Now that was a couple of years ago. I'm betting it's more like $7,000 today to redo that. Okay, so the statue is actually exactly everything down to the little pin, but she's looking down at her grave. She's not looking straight ahead as the photograph shows. Let's see if I've got that. Yeah, there it is. This is the nicest man. The statue was stolen off the grave because it didn't look like it came from a cemetery. There's no angel wings on it. At that time, there was a group of people going around and stealing statues like this and claiming they came from estates. They were yard ornaments and so forth. So Stephen Score, who owned an antique store in Boston, after it was stolen and sold and resold and so forth, he ended up with it and had put it out on a magazine to be sold for $3,000. And then it came out on the national news. This little statue goes, "Oh my gosh, I've got stolen property." He said, "Carolyn, I thought I was going to get in trouble for telling that I had that." I said, no. So he let us know that he had it. He drove down from Boston in an unair conditioned station wagon with the windows down in July and brought the statue back. And that's the letter that he wrote to our main trustee at Greenwood. And there was all the dignitaries in Clarksville, everybody was there. And when they put the statue back on the pedestal, the doxology was sung. And it was just a very emotional thing. So Stephen Score, by the way, let me tell you who he was. Martha Stewart, he was her personal antique buyer. If she wanted a 1776 chair from whatever home or whatever, he had millions that he could bid on it, millions. So he gave us back the statue. That was $3,000. Probably not a lot to him, but to a lot of people it might have been. But anyway, I drove up. Whenever I write a book, I don't stay in Clarksville. I go to the place. I've flown all the United States, driven to verify things. And I went to Boston to see him, and he said, "Carolyn, I just couldn't believe I got involved in something so tawdry." That Boston accent, tawdry. Isn't that a word you use all the time? Tawdry. So he was very kind. Unfortunately, he let a homeless man into his store to paint, and the guy attacked his family. And he called for the police a total of 3 times, and nobody came. Well, he had a heart attack. They got the guy out of the house, out of this business, and he eventually died of cancer. And he said, "I'm not going to do good anymore. It's just." His wife was endangered. His son Avery was endangered, and they could have easily killed him. But in being sold and resold, one of the ladies that bought the statue broke her arm off, and it's been repaired. She once held a rose in her hand, but that's gone. People were throwing rocks at the statue, and along her dress line there, it was been hit. I asked the descendants if they would feel good about putting a glass case on it. Some of the nicer statues in Bonaventure Cemetery. Have y'all seen the little girl Gracie? That they had to put a glass case around hers because of this type thing to protect it from people that would do something mean like that. Okay, this is why I think we should honor him. Just amazing what this man did. Oh, he had confrontations at his home. He got worried. He had people that sort of told him things. And so he goes home, he sits on his front porch with a shotgun in his lap, and here comes this crowd of people up Greenwood Avenue. They're going to have words with the judge. And he says, anybody that crosses that fence line is going to get it. and they walked off and left. He had a nephew, Pope Grundy Johnson's son, that went to the Spanish-American War, and even after catching, it was either malaria or something, I can't find a death record, he's dying, and this general won't let him come home. Well, I don't know what Judge Tyler said, but that boy was put on the next plane. So he got him home, and he did die. He had a problem with a sheriff over an issue. His health, of course, was going down. Loss of his mother, loss of his wife, loss of Nanny, and 2 courthouses that he had to rebuild. Okay, I told you about the myth about, the myth around the Morrow hanging. The myth was that Nanny begged her father not to hang him. Come on, folks, she's 4 years old. Do you think he's discussing a hanging with his 4-year-old daughter? I don't think so. So that was one of the rumors that got out. And then he hung many men. No, he condemned 8, but only 1 was hanged. And that may be it. Okay, somebody said they were going to ask me some questions. Okay, here I am.
Did you say Minnie, the older sister? Was that her name?
Emmy?
Emmy.
Mm-hmm.
Did you say she was married, had been married, or never married?
She married, okay, let me think.
She married the minor?
Yeah, she married the minor. Now, Judge Tyler's sister, Nanny, married Pope Grundy Johnson. I know Pope Grundy Johnson, who was the son of Cabe Johnson. But yes, she went out west, married this minor, found out it was a big mistake. They got divorced. She remarried a man and lived out her life in Franklin, Tennessee. Yes?
What year was the statue sold?
1996.
And it was returned the following year?
I'm sorry?
And it was returned the following year?
Well, it was, you know what time of the year it was? I know it was brought back in July because of what I told you, that it was hot as blazes that day they brought it back. It had only been stolen for a couple of months, I think. And the weird thing about it was people were saying, we want Nanny brought back. Well, Nanny never went anywhere. It was just her statue that was stolen. It's like somebody dug up her body and was, taking it off somewhere. And we want, and then the headlines read, "We got Nanny back. Nanny's at home. Nanny never went anywhere. Nanny's in the ground." So that bothered me a lot more than I want to admit. But they shouldn't have said that. That was just, everybody thought, oh, I have more of attachment to Nanny than you do, whatever. But claimed her as her own. Judge Tyler was not rich. Let me just say that. Everybody thinks, oh, well, he was a judge. Well, he's rich. No, he's not. There was a struggle in their household, as you saw with his sister, who left over the matter of money. So he was never rich, but he never stole a cent, not from the government, not from the people. Wouldn't you like to just get in his brain and think, what were you thinking when you did this? But, and his 2 times great nephew, Judge Tyler Gill, a good friend of mine, and his wife and his daughter Emily, just wonderful people. I'm proud to say that I know them.
Why was Latin and Greek taught when nobody used it? Why?
I don't know.
It was taught here in the Bethel College.
It was. I got up in the attic and I found my great aunt's stuff, Latin and Greek.
I took Latin in high school.
Yeah, I did. I took it too. I think because of the word, of the etymology of it. If you see this word like pseudo, then you know it's false. It's something with the language, but it was considered higher learning. My gosh, some of the books that they were required to read in high school, I can't see a high school student reading that kind of stuff now. I mean, really high level. Oh, look at the daughter reading Atlantis at age 8. We're slackers now. I'm just telling you, we're slackers. They read Lord of the Flies and whatever, Scarlet Letter and all that kind of stuff. Oh, what is that one that had the witches in it? Double, toil and trouble. What is it?
Hocus Pocus.
No.
No.
It's one of those supposed classics and so forth.
Oh, Shakespeare.
What?
You're talking about Shakespeare, aren't you?
I'm just dumbfounded when I look at what we're teaching today, but anyway, I don't have to worry about it anymore. Anybody else?
So the Guild Library, was that all of his personal books, or were they?
No. They opened with a donation of 500 books, and then they started subscriptions and so forth, and then eventually they moved to this building, and the Women's Club, the Women's Federation Club, took up the cause, and we got the library that we have today, which is portrait. It's the first thing you walk in. You know, I'm doing the research on Judge Tyler, and I got to walk by his portrait each time going, I know I'm going to get it right. I know I am. But the descendants said I got it right, and that's the only ones I care about. So, and let me tell you this, again, being a biologist, I was terrified to write a book. I was always taught to put up or shut up. My father was a drill sergeant, you know what I'm talking about? So I started writing the book, and I thought I needed to see if this is something I need to pursue. I went down the street, college professor, Dr. Inga Filippo, maybe some of you know her. Folks, come on. College professors, I expected her to look at me, honestly I did, and say, Carolyn, you don't need to do this, you just need to go home and stay in your field. You know, biology is your field. She didn't do that. She said, you write it. And I left there feeling so elated, and look where it led me. 11 books later, now I'm the historian, I'm a biologist, but I tell people they chose me because I'm old and I'm blonde, because my predecessors were old and blonde. So that has to be a requirement. But I was born and raised in Clarksville, and we were there for 4 generations, so there's a little bit more to it. But be an encourager. If somebody says they're going to write, I had teenagers in my biology class that say, I'm going to write a book about these fictional things. Well, look at J.K. Rowling. She was denied how many times? Told to go home how many times? And now they're wishing that they had listened to her. You tell people to write, and especially if you've got family history, write it down, and don't let people throw your stuff out, because somebody's going to want it. Somebody's going to want it. Well, thank you so much for listening to me.
Thank y'all for coming out. Got a question?
I'd like to say thank you for speaking out so well. I have hearing aids and I can hear everything you said.
Well, I'll tell you, I have a teacher voice, and I would go out in public. My husband would go, where you keep your. I say it's something that you can't get away from. It's your teacher voice.
Well,
So I get out. Everybody in the neighborhood gets to hear about my poems. Can't help it. It's just me. Thank you so much for coming out, because it takes effort to get out on a Friday night. When you want.
I'm still, Judge Tylerville here in Todd County, that's his ancestry following two.
The family split when the Tylers came into Tennessee. The Keelings, who was his father's side of the family, went in Kentucky. So you've got Keelings, Tylers, Gills, and there's probably some more that I didn't research, but they're like rabbits. They're everywhere. So it's not hard to find a Tyler, I tell you.
For the rabbit.
Yep.
So does C.W. Tyler have any direct descendants still alive
No,
today?
because the boy didn't. No. He died fairly young. He died in Palm Springs. I'm not sure what he died from, but he died, and there's no direct descendants from him, but certainly from his brothers and sisters that he had.